et surtout de la bonne musique.
West Africa Démocratie Radio, à vous la parole.
WADR, l'info chez vous.
WADR, promoting dialogue.
It's 6 p.m. in Dakar. Good evening and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and worldwide on wadr.org. Welcome to Newslink. Here are the top stories. Authorities in Guinea ban opposition protest over on deauthorization. Burkina Faso takes delivery of a batch of 100 armored vehicles from China. Mali's former transitional Prime Minister Senegal rejects allegations of financial mismanagement by the Director General's office.
Does anyone really believe that a prime minister who served for nearly 4 years could have stolen only 35 million? The Ajefu you see today, it was I who created it. When I left the MRTP, I left behind 60 billion in cash, of which 37 billion was allocated solely to the Ajefu.
And calls intensify over the disappearance of over $2 billion at Nigeria's petroleum refinery company. Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
Here is Abdullahi Hassan with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining us and a warm welcome to our listeners within and outside the sub-region. Tonight, Newslink begins in Guinea, where authorities have banned the January 6 nationwide protest to demand the departure of the ruling junta. The ban was announced a few hours after the commencement of the rally in Conakry, which unfortunately turned violent as protesters clashed with security forces deployed to maintain law and order. At least one person was confirmed killed in the violence, and a number of others were injured. Emoradet reports.
Monday's protest, organized by Force Vive of Guinea, was to demand the immediate departure of the ruling military and instill a civilian transition after the December 31, 2024 transition charter agreed on between the junta and ECOWAS elapsed. The Conakry governorate banned the demonstration over its non-authorization of the opposition rally despite the announced lifting of the ban, echoing recent warnings from President Mamadi Doumbouya on the firmness of the state in the face of public disturbances. The governor of Conakry, Hadja Mamawa Sila, ordered security forces to ensure free movement. Recall on December 31, the opposition said it will no longer recognize the authority of the junta after the 31 December deadline for its failure to initiate transitional commitments and called for a series of demonstrations. The groups also denounced the death of more than 60 demonstrators and the disappearances of opponents under the current regime. Around the capital, tensions between the government and the opposition in Conakry remain higher. The transitional president, General Mamadi Doumbouya, had in his New Year's message promised a return to constitutional order in 2025, announcing a constitutional referendum in the first quarter and lifting restrictions on political activities.
A more than reporting that Burkina Faso has taken delivery of at least 100 armored vehicles coming straight from China to strengthen the action capabilities of the Burkinabe armed forces. In addition to the hardware from China, 90 Sharkman trucks and tankers, as well as 45 Sharkman tractors manufactured by Chinese automaker Sharkman, were also delivered. Christopher Ticho has spun this report.
This recent delivery is not the first in the framework of military cooperation between China and Burkina Faso, as the fragile security state has in recent days welcomed a series of deliveries from the Asian giant. In October 2024, 22 infantry fighting vehicles from China were received at the port of Tema, Ghana, before being transported to Ouagadougou. These vehicles were equipped with a 30mm automatic cannon. In June 2024, 90 mine-resistance and ambush-protected vehicles were delivered, and in January 2024, another batch of Chinese armored vehicles were also received. China is not Burkina Faso's only partner in military acquisitions. In January 2024, the country also acquired a batch of mine resistance and ambush resistance vehicle from Egypt. These were Buffalo E-10s, an improved version of the Temsa 2, a flagship armored vehicle of Egyptian production. These multiple acquisitions are part of defense strategy put in place by Burkina Faso to face the terrorist threats. They aim to strengthen the army's capacity to contain and repel armed groups operating in the region.
Christopher Ticho reporting there. Well, we remain in the Sahel, but this time not on security matters, as the former transitional Prime Minister of Mali has responded to a report by the Auditor General's office which accused him of financial mismanagement. Shoga Kokala Maika rejected the allegations in his New Year's address. Maika criticized what he described as arbitrary arrests carried out by the current authorities while maintaining his support for the military government despite occasional criticisms. Etisu has more.
Appearing composed before his supporters, Maika addressed the allegations for the first time since the report's release. The document accuses him of financial impropriety during his tenure as Prime Minister, a claim he categorically denies.
Does anyone really believe that a Prime Minister who served for nearly 4 years could have stolen only 35 million? The Ajefu you see today, it was I who created it. When I was at the MRTP, I established the division. When I left the MRTP, I left behind 60 billion in cash, of which 37 billion was allocated solely to the Ajefu.
As dissenting voices continue to face legal action, Maika denounced what he labeled as arbitrary arrests targeting critics of the regime.
We must avoid abuses. Any power that indulges in abuses is destined to fall. When 5 million was sent to the regions, along with an additional 5,000, just to gather random people to march and demand the resignation of the Prime Minister on the grounds of betrayal, without providing any evidence, someone stood up during the meeting and said they believe these marches shouldn't happen, that instead, effort should be made to reconcile people. That person was arrested and imprisoned to silence others. You cannot govern a country through fear. Even if you imprison everyone, it won't be enough. Governance must be rooted in virtue.
Although dismissed in November by his former allies in the military leadership, Maika reiterated his support for the junta, even as he voiced major criticisms of their actions.
Etisu, that report filed in by WADR's Bamako correspondent Ali Cham.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Remember, we're live on wadr.org. Let's take you to the Central Sahel region, where the Chadian National Election Management Agency, ANGE, has issued a strong warning to political parties in the country against declaring results from the December 2024 triple elections. The electoral body said only the commission is authorized to announce provisional results. This is because opposition parties in Doba have accused the ruling MPs of ballot stuffing, while in Mayo Kebbi East, the UNDR party has faced allegations of prematurely proclaiming results. Recall more than 8 million voters participated in electing deputies, senators and municipal councillors, but the post-election period has been marked by tension and accusations. Ahmed Baticharet is president of the Chadian Electoral Commission, who has condemned such actions as violations of the Electoral Code and urged political actors to remain calm and patient.
Il nous est donné de constater que depuis le scrutin de 29 December dernier.
Since the December 29 elections, it has come to our attention that certain political parties and coalitions, instead of awaiting the provisional results, are engaging in actions that violate the law. Some candidates have prematurely declared victory through untimely and illegal statements, even going as far as celebrating their supposed success. It is essential to remind these candidates, as well as the supporting parties and coalitions, that such actions are not authorized under the electoral code. Without access to the official polling station records, these entities are in no position to proclaim election results. Let me reiterate to all political actors that the electoral code outlines sanctions including criminal penalties for those who engage in unlawful acts. ANJ is firmly committed to enforcing these provisions, including the penalties stipulated. I urge all political actors, including those who did not participate in the elections but feel compelled to make pronouncements, to remain calm, patient and restrained. ANJ will announce the provisional results within the legal time frame. Once published, these results can be contested through the proper channels and within the designated time limits. Lastly, I wish to commend and encourage candidates, political parties and coalitions that have shown responsible conduct throughout this process. I urge them to remain confident and composed as we move forward.
À demeurer confiant et serein.
Ahmed Bachuret is the president of the Chadian National Election Management Agency. Well, in Côte d'Ivoire, the political landscape is fast heating up as opposition parties, including the People's Party of Côte d'Ivoire (PPACI), led by former President Laurent Gbagbo, have addressed key challenges ahead of the upcoming October elections. Gbagbo, who remains ineligible due to his removal from the electoral list, outlined the party's priorities, including his re-registration and efforts to ensure a fair electoral process. Albin Ade has more on this report, voiced by Francis Boniface.
For former Ivorian President Laurent Gbagbo and the candidates for the People's Party of Côte d'Ivoire, PPACI, the goal in this election is twofold: to continue the political and legal efforts aimed at restoring his eligibility for the upcoming presidential election in October. Here is Laurent Gbagbo, leader of the PPACI.
I want to emphasize the stakes of our fight in 2025. This is a battle within a battle. The first fight is for my re-registration on the electoral register. That registration is a struggle in itself, and winning the election is the second battle.
After being removed from the electoral list due to his conviction in Côte d'Ivoire, Laurent Gbagbo is ineligible to run in the next presidential election, despite being his party's candidate. Only an amnesty law can restore his eligibility. He has once again called on Ivorian President Alassane Ouattara to address the issue, reminding him of the intervention he, Gbagbo, made in Ouattara's favor when Ouattara faced the same challenge during Gbagbo's presidency.
Even Alassane, the current president of the Republic, faced a similar challenge. To support him in 1995, I chose not to submit my candidacy, even though my dossier was fully prepared at the time. What sacrifices didn't we make for him? In Pretoria, I took the initiative to ask Thabo Mbeki to write me a letter stating that he believed it would be good for Alassane to run as a candidate. Using that letter, I authorized all candidacies, including his.
At the end of the PPCI meeting, a plan was adopted to mobilize supporters for the upcoming presidential election. Several activities will be organized starting in January 2025. The PPSCI will also push for an inclusive, transparent, and democratic election in October 2025.
Francis Boniface with that report filed in by WADR's Abidjan correspondent Albin Ade. Meanwhile, Pan-African activist Kemi Seba has announced his candidacy for the April 2026 presidential elections in Benin. In a video released on January 5, Seba criticized President Patrice Talon's governance, accusing him of worsening social and economic inequalities and favoring foreign companies over local ones. The activist outlined 3 potential pathways of his candidacy, including being nominated by the opposition party, the Democrats forming a coalition to challenge the electoral code, or launching a movement called Operation Jericho to mobilize public protest. The 2026 elections will include presidential, legislative, and municipal contests, with candidate submissions due in October this year.
Si je m'adresse aujourd'hui à vous,
I address you today in these grave and tumultuous times because our people are enduring conditions that defy all rationality. Benin is facing an unprecedented social crisis, a crisis that benefits a wealthy minority, while the vast majority live in unimaginable hardship. Compounding this reality is President Patrice Talon's relentless persecution of national economic operators. He forces them into exile and subjects them to economic, political, and psychological despair. This is because he refuses to share what he considers the spoils of Benin, neither with his peers nor with the people. Instead, he seeks to take everything for himself. When he does share, it is with predatory Western economic operators. French companies dominate Benin's economy, enjoying extensive tax exemptions, a luxury denied to Beninese businesses, which are instead overtaxed by the current regime. This unjust situation has sparked widespread frustration across the country, from the north to the south and from the east to the west. A suffering people cannot be a peaceful people. Acknowledging this truth is not a call for violence, but a recognition of an essential principle of governance and intelligence. After months, if not years, of deep reflection, I have decided to respond to your persistent calls. I am honored to accept your appeals and announce my candidacy for the presidency of Benin.
À être candidat à la présidence du Bénin.
Pan-Africanist Kemi Seba speaking there. You are listening to Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM Dakar, Senegal, and online on wadr.org. Here's a reminder of our top stories. Authorities in Guinea ban opposition protest over non-authorization. Burkina Faso takes delivery of a batch of 100 armored vehicles from China. Mali's former transitional Prime Minister, Choguel Maïga, breaks silence following allegation of financial mismanagement by the Auditor General's office. Ahead in the news, calls intensify over disappearance of over $2 billion at Nigeria's petroleum refinery company. We also have the guest interview and sports news. Please stay with us.
Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
Many thanks for staying with us. Liberia's Internal Audit Agency Director General David Kema has submitted 12 special audit reports to President Joseph Boakai. According to Kema, the submission aims to address high-risk areas and prevent financial mismanagement, reinforcing the principles of good governance, accountability, and transparency. WADR's Grace Joshua Morovia has the rest of the details.
Director General of the Liberia's Internal Audit Agency, David A. Kamad, provided an overview of the Internal Audit Agency achievements, emphasizing its mandate to monitor and conduct special audits. He further noted that the special audits were carried out across ministries and agencies based on risk assessment or direct requests from the president or head of institution.
Special audits are usually commissioned by the president, the head of the entity, or the IA Director General. And those are based on the assessed rate those areas. For this year, we've done 12 or so special audits for different ministries and agencies. And what we do when we get those audit results, we submit them to the head of the entity, and of course a copy is included in our report to the president.
While the detail of the 12 special audits have not been disclosed publicly, Kama has showed that the findings and recommendation has been shared with the respective institution and the president. He stressed that it is the responsibility of the head of ministries and the president to implement these recommendations. Kama emphasized the crucial role of the internal audit in Liberia public sectors, especially as the government decentralized its operation. For West Africa Democracy,
WADR's Grace Joshua Morovia with that report. And just before the guest segment, let's take you to Nigeria, where the Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project, SERAP, has called on the Nigerian government to probe the National Petroleum Company Limited, NNPC, to explain the whereabouts of over 825 billion naira or $2.5 billion in public funds earmarked for refinery rehabilitation and other oil-related revenues. The allegations were detailed in the 2021 annual report by the Auditor General of the Federation, released on November 27, 2024.
Politics,
analysis on major news,
social matters, and all. This is a guest.
The guest segment of Newslink takes us to Ghana, where President-elect John Dramani Mahama has officially endorsed the current Speaker of Parliament, the Right Honourable Alban Bambin, to lead the 9th Parliament of the Fourth Republic. The decision by President-elect Mahama comes as Ghana prepares for the dissolution of the 8th Parliament. Our guest is Evangelist Richard Pry, a member of the NDC communication team. He speaks about the importance of the President's endorsement.
His Excellency John Dramani Mahama has done something that shows class when it comes to leadership, and experience has also. Speaker Bambin was once upon a time the longest serving member of Parliament, and then had the opportunity to be nominated by His Excellency John Dramani Mahama and the NDC to represent them as a candidate for the speakership. By the grace of God, as of that time, the NDC had 137 MPs. The MPP also had 137 MPs, with one independent who decided to work with them. When they went into the election, that is 4 years ago, Speaker Bambin won overwhelmingly against the nomination by the outgoing president, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, whose candidate was the former speaker, Speaker Michael Quay.
How independent do you think Bambin will be when he becomes Speaker of the 9th Parliament, especially when he is a member of the NDC and being nominated by the incoming president?
Thank you, my brother, for this question. Personally, I have had the opportunity to be lectured and nurtured by Speaker Bambin. And from that experience, he is a very fair-minded person and would do a good job, even though the NDC has this 2/3, and then him being a member of the party, and especially when he has been nominated by the incoming president, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, I can say for sure that he will be fair, and his judgment will be one that will not be colored by his political affiliation. He will do a good job. That I can predict.
Speaker Bambin had an issue with the Supreme Court taking decision regarding legislative matters, to the extent that he tried to set up a procedure that communication coming in the Parliament should be directed to a specific committee, especially when they are in session, instead of halting legislative processes through a citation from the court. Don't you think he will intend to restrict the Supreme Court in terms of complaints being brought to aid by maybe NPP members who may feel disenchanted as per his rule?
We have three arms of government: the executive, legislature, and the judiciary. All of them, per the Constitution of Ghana, are independent, even though their work sometimes interlink. So whatever happens in Parliament, it should not override the rules and the Constitution. Any judgment that comes from our Supreme Court should not be seen as overriding that of Parliament, which also is independent and has its own rules when it comes to the House. Parliament is a master of its own game or rules. So I don't foresee that friction that happened in the past 3 months or 2 months coming up again and having any effect, or what the work of Parliament under the leadership of Speaker Bambin will be.
Richard Pry is a member of the NDC communication team. Up next is sports news with Sankle Janko.
Hello out there, a warm welcome and thank you for joining us. The CAF Champions League match day 4 over the weekend delivered some thrilling encounters across Africa. Al Hilal Omdurman became the first side to reach the knockout stage as they maintained their lead at the top with a 1-1 draw against MC Alger. Young Africans kept their quarter-final hopes alive with a resounding 3-1 comeback victory over TP Mazembe in Dar es Salaam. FAR Rabat solidified their hold on Group B with a 2-0 win over Maniama Union of Ghana. In Casablanca, Raja edged Mamelodi Sundowns 1-0 in a fairy clash marked by 3 red cards. Orlando Pirates seized the top spot in Group C with a dominant 3-0 win against Stade d'Abidjan. CR Belouizdad ended Al Ahly's unbeaten streak with a late 1-0 victory in Algiers, moving into second place with 6 points, trailing the Pirates by 2. Pyramids secured a dramatic 2-1 victory over Esperance in Cairo, tying the Tunisians at top of the group standings. Meanwhile, Sagrada Esperanza edged Joliba of Mali 1-0, keeping their knockout hopes alive. In the Confederation Cup, Nigeria's Enyimba put in a masterclass performance against Mozambique's Black Bulls with a clinical 4-1 victory on Sunday. In Abidjan, ASEC Mimosas were held to a 1-1 draw by former winners USM Alger, whose points away from home sees them maintain their lead position in Group C, followed by Mimosas of Cote d'Ivoire, Jaraf of Senegal, and Orapa United. And that's it for sports. It's back to you.
Sports was brought to you by Sankole Janko. And with that, we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Maojo Juve, Umu Daniogo, and Sheikh Injai for the technical support. Do interact with us via social media platforms, X, Instagram at WADR News, and on Facebook, WADR English Service. I'm Abdullahi Hassan. Good evening.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, Newmi FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate